Hello, everybody. Greetings from
Hello.
IGCP and Heartcare Foundation of India. I'm Dr. K.K. Agarwal, and I'm currently the president of Confederation of Medical Association of Asia and Oceania. I'm past national president Indian Medical Association. I'm president Heartcare Foundation of India and chief editor of MedTalks. We have an interesting session today, and we are going to talk about immunosuppression vis-a-vis psoriasis, newer treatments in psoriasis, and we will also be talking about immunosuppression in psoriasis in the COVID era. Should we start it? Should we continue it? And I have an important faculty with me. I have Dr. Jacker Thomas and Dr. Abhishek Day, and both of them are from Chennai and Calcutta, well-known experts in the field of psoriasis and dermatology. And I basically will start our discussion right away. And, and in this next 1 hour, thousands of doctors will be participating with us. If they have any questions, they can put it on the chat box, and we will continue our discussion with all of them with that. But before, once I start the session, I will start with Dr. Jacker Thomas. And my question will be to Dr. Jacker Thomas is that what is the current status of psoriasis in the country? How common it is? And what is the current status of psoriasis in India?
I will say it's very common, sir. And I would like to complement that statement by saying that it is the #1 non-communicable disease of dermatology. We see it so frequently. There are two diseases which we keep seeing frequently. One is psoriasis, the other one is dermatophytosis. One after the other, they come to attend our outpatient clinic, and it's really becoming a psychosocial burden, I must tell. Besides the physical burden that the patient is having, the psychosocial burden that it carries is something enormous. I'm sure Dr. Abhishek will also agree with that. Very, very common.
Yes, sir. Definitely, it's very common disease. Epidemiologically, about 3% of the population can have, up to 3% of the population can have psoriasis. So, in a country of 130 crore, it's a huge number. What I have understood for my limited experience about 10-15 years in dermatology, I could find people are getting increasingly aware of the condition. Previously, there are mild to moderate psoriasis. People may not used to come to us and they used to treat it like an eczema. But now, more and more people are kind of know the disease. They are going to dermatology very early in their disease conditions. That's why there's a change in the perspective as far as patients' patient awareness part. But I think it's a very common disease even in India.
Psoriasis is a very common disease in the country. And because this session is being attended by dermatologists across the India, but we will also be floating this link to all the people who are interested in the field of dermatology, also immunology, and also people who are using immunosuppression in great detail. So if I have to characterize a couple of, say, punch lines for a person who wants to revise this program and who is a non-dermatologist, how does he recognize psoriasis? Is it silvery plaque he should remember, or what? Dr. Day.
Sir, as we all know that psoriasis may have multiple forms, but in general, majority of the psoriasis, what we tend to tell as psoriasis vulgaris, they come as a itchy, red, very, very itchy actually, red scale with plaque lesions. Usually we see in the extension like elbow, knee and buttocks and palms and soles, and sometimes in the scalp. So these are the most common areas. So as a general physician, this is the most commonly encountered types of psoriasis we may be encountering. But there are, of course, other types and which may be a little bit more difficult to diagnosis for more non-exposed to dermatology doctors.
Dr. Thomas, how many types of psoriasis will be there? Can we summarize all different types of psoriasis?
Actually, I could name off directly and straight away 6 phenotypes actually. One is a late onset disease with the course is mild and progressive. Then you have the palmoplantar psoriasis with or without joint involvement. early onset disease, which is very mild, severe disease with extensive skin lesions and minimal joint involvement, early onset disease, severe with family history. That is very important, often associated with atopy. I've been telling this very often associated with atopy, and involvement of the palms and toes are rare in these types. Then you have one large chunk which is associated with the metabolic syndrome. So many comorbidities in this condition. There's hypertension, there's obesity, there is smoking, there's cardiovascular disease, there is CKD, there is COPD. All these are associated in the last 6 type, which I just told you.
Okay, when we come back to psoriasis as a metabolic disorder, how do we differentiate? This will become what is the reason for that? Is it same or different? And what is the reason why a metabolic syndrome is presenting with psoriatic patients?
Yes, I'll tell you something about that. Now, here is a point on what we call as lipidomics. I'm sure the general physicians will know better about it, and of course, the pharmacologists. Lipidomics, one thing where the fat within each cell is being metabolized, and here it is within the sebocytes. And when the fat within the sebocytes get accumulated, that translates itself into obesity. That translates itself into cardiovascular disease. That translates itself to hypertension. And from this goes on chronic kidney disease as well as COPD.
Okay, so coming back to the management of psoriasis, what's new in the management of psoriasis in the last couple of years? Abhishek and then Dr. Thomas.
See, first, sir, for us, last, I would say last 5-7 years, we understand psoriasis is more of a systemic disease. We always knew that psoriasis also has arthritis and other conditions, but now we more and more treat psoriasis as more of a systemic disease. So one part of the management change, the paradigm change is we tend to treat psoriasis more aggressively, even early psoriasis, because we know there is a chance that it can lead to metabolic syndrome in later. There are certain suggestions that psoriasis, if treated early with good quality medicines, then there is a chance that we can decrease the progress into the metabolic syndrome. And also, what a lot of doctors around the world started telling that we tell our psoriasis patients who tend to have more overweight and to have a lifestyle changes. It's like almost like a diabetes. We ask them for exercise and good quality of diet, and those are the paradigm shift in the understanding of the psoriasis. But as far as the medical treatment, there are good amount of drugs has come, which is the last 5, 7, or 10 years. We are being exposed to a lot of drugs. One important drug in the smaller molecule we are using is basically apremilast, which has come in the last 3-4 years to India. Another drug which possibly was there much before also, but we Indian doctors are much more comfortable using now is basically methotrexate. Cyclosporin. Our methotrexate is always there, which is the possibly still now one of the most used drug for psoriasis. But what has changed the severe psoriasis treatment as last 5-7 years? The increasing use of biologics. We have been using TNF-alpha blockers. We have been using interleukin-17 blockers. So these are the new molecules which has given us hope, even for our psoriasis patient, which is very severe and difficult to manage otherwise with the conventional medications.
So I'll come back to Dr. Thomas and we will take over one drug by drug. Let's come back to methotrexate because that is something which even the physicians are using. And when it comes to biologics, they try to refer it to a senior dermatologist. But methotrexate is something because they follow it in rheumatoid arthritis, they follow the same in other conditions. What are the protocols and what are the success rates of the methotrexate 1? 2, we know methotrexate needs to be monitored. It has hepatotoxicity, and we know that methotrexate over 3 years, 4 years, people are cautious about using it, and psoriasis is a lifelong disease. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, sir. Now, methotrexate, as you said, that was the earliest drug that is available. Therefore, it has been trusted and tested well enough, and it's tried well enough. So with a drug like that which is also economical, easy to take, it's only a once weekly dosage that we give. We give 7.5 to 15 milligram once a week. But the point is, all of us have been knowing that the hepatic profile has to be taken care of. The liver function test has to be taken. Now, the point is how frequently will we take and when will we really accept it to be hepatotoxic? Now, it has been understood by all dermatologists that once the enzymes, the liver enzymes, increase to more than 3 times the basic, that's why a pre-treatment liver enzyme estimation is required. You keep looking at the liver enzymes at least once in 3 months. And once it is found that it is more than 3 times the pre-treatment liver enzyme, that's the time when we have to take caution. But all said about the liver enzymes, about hepatotoxicity, what we are seeing now is, I do not know whether Dr. Abhishek will agree with it. What we see now is more of the hemopoietic system getting involved. Suddenly there is fall in the blood counts. Suddenly there's fall in the platelet. Suddenly these patients start bleeding from the psoriatic lesions. The psoriatic lesions are there, and from there they start bleeding. And quite often the physicians, general physicians, run amok. They are not very sure what's happening. So that's the time when they say, okay, you go back to your dermatologist and continue treatment. And that's where we have to be careful. Once the blood cell counts start dropping, we have to stop the drug. There's no way at all. We have to stop the drug and go to some other molecules, which although not so economical, but very, very safe. For instance, the oral retinoids, acitretin is one thing. And what Dr. Abhishek also told is about your apremilast, the small molecules, which are much, much safer from the investigative point of view and from the metabolic point of view. Acitretin, of course, don't use in females. They say use in caution, don't use, that's the best thing. But in males, you can use it. There's no difficulty at all. So looking at the lipid profile.
How long we can... Normally we say, how long we can continue?
Which one, sir?
Methotrexate.
Methotrexate, you can give it for quite a number of years. There's no harm. But you have to give breaks. Say once in a year or so, give a break. Make sure that everything is normal. And if the patient doesn't need it, there's no need to continue with it any further. You could give it a break.
What about adding hydroxychloroquine? Do we add that as we do it in rheumatoid?
No. Hydroxychloroquine is actually contraindicated in psoriasis.
Okay, so this is contraindicated in psoriasis. And number 3 is what about cyclosporin?
Cyclosporin we do give for very extensive. Now, to put it in simple terms, mild disease, just topical is enough. Moderate to severe disease, only we go for systemic treatment. In systemic treatment, the order will be methotrexate first, cyclosporin next, acitretin. Then the biologics, of course. Because we have scores of dermatologists in India who are very fond of biologics and who jump to biologics straight away. There's no need for early initiation of biologics. You can wait. They don't respond. That is my humble opinion. They do not respond to the conventional drugs, then you can go to the biologics because they are pretty expensive. Pretty expensive. So expensive that the patient will just take one course and with that forget about it. And then it's not that they do not have side effects. They also have side effects. For instance, what Abhishek was telling about the anti-IL-17. That type of biologic, anti-IL-17, which is now available by Novartis. You have to be careful, secukinumab. You have to be careful because in this current era, that type of biologic is known to cause proneness for infection. So we have to be careful. That's where this question about this evening's discussion on immunosuppression in psoriasis. Otherwise, psoriasis per se does not cause any immunosuppression. It's the treatment that one has to be careful about.
But Dr. Abhishek, let's now start discussing the biologics. What are the biologics we give, and what are the risks, and how long they have to be given? Say, we as a physician, we have been using them in rheumatoid arthritis. We have been using them in ulcerative colitis. We have been using them in Crohn's disease. How about in psoriasis? What are the different types of biologics available? Abhishek.
Yeah, sir. Basically, among the drugs, there are a lot of drugs available internationally, but I'll confine myself to the drugs available in India, commonly used drugs in India. So we started our biologics use with etanercept as a TNF-alpha blocker drugs, which have been used for quite a long time now. Then we got the hold of infliximab and adalimumab, another two kind of drugs, which is TNF-alpha blockers. Now, of which infliximab has a problem. It's a very good drug, though. There's a problem is first it has to be given IV. Admitting the patient, a lot of dermatologists are not very convenient of admitting a patient because we see in clinics, not many times we have hospital facilities. Adalimumab has an advantage over infliximab because it can be given subcutaneously. So that has a distinct advantage. In 2016-17 onwards, we started getting interleukin-17 blockers, secukinumab. Sir has already mentioned about that much more commonly, and along with the adalimumab and secukinumab has become the primary, most important biologics which have been used by dermatologists in India. Very recently, there's another interleukin-17 blocker which is in the phase 3 studies, and it's going to be released soon. It's ixekizumab. So that's another interleukin-17 blocker.
And what about the biologics which are being produced in India? Like adalimumab is not the original one.
Yeah. There are biosimilars one which is getting, like adalimumab. If you use the original molecule, is very expensive. It's not largely not available in India. However, there are biosimilars which is getting produced in India with different labs and different companies are getting it. Also, there's another biologics by a company in India which they have manufactured their own self. However, the biologics response is much lesser than the adalimumab or secukinumab. That's why it's not that commonly used biologics in India.
So biosimilars now are available. Even most of the biosimilars, the cost will be quite significant. Those may be higher, but at least it becomes available to for something is better than nothing. People who can't afford with that. Now, if you once we have started biologics, how long we continue?
Sir, ideally, biologists, many of the biologists can be continued for a long period of time. There are data which suggest at least 5 years secukinumab is completely safe. However, in general, in India, there's a tendency the patient may not be continuing the biologics for a long period of time, as I mentioned, mostly because of the cost factors. So we usually suggest the patient, if we have to give biologics, if conventional immunomodulators treatment fails, then only usually biologics are indicated. If we give biologics at least for 6 months to give the biologics, I advise my patient. But many of my patients are in biologics for last 3-4 years, and they are doing quite well.
So the question comes is that in India, normally say for rheumatoid and for Crohn's, we normally say you may even require it for a lifelong. But what are the criteria to say that we can reduce the dose or we can even stop it, give a gap? Dr. Thomas.
Yes, sir. Now, for example, I'll take one example only, so that prototypically we'll be able to take up of a discussion. The IL-17 inhibitors, they can be given for up to 6 months. And after that, continued in a small dose, say in the case of IL-17 inhibitors, particularly in secukinumab, at least 150 milligrams every month. It has to be continued. And that again is an expensive proposal to any patient. At least 150 milligrams every month continuous for another 6 months. And then at the end of the day, what is very significant that all of us should keep in mind is that one should remember that these can start producing anti-drug antibodies. There are a group of patients who start developing and producing anti-drug antibodies. So these antibodies themselves will bring down the effect of whatever biologic you're using. So again, they have come back. The studies have shown that when you add methotrexate along with these biologics to these patients, then the incidence of anti-drug antibodies is reduced. Now, this is all a game which is being played by the pharmaceutical industry, I can tell you. Because there's so many things that are being done, and then again, they come down to methotrexate. So you say use methotrexate, then your ADA, your anti-drug antibodies do not develop.
And what about giving them a holiday? You use a TNF blocker for a couple of years, give them a holiday for a year and restart?
Yes. Etanercept also is the same method that we are going to use. One has to be taking several factors into consideration, sir. Apart from the age, the gender, and then the affordability of the patient, then whether he really requires it. See, for instance, if a patient comes with arthropathy, arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, we have no choice. We have no choice but to use the biologics. But alongside with biologics, we must also make use of drugs like methotrexate so that these anti-drug antibodies do not develop. Psoriatic arthritis, we have no choice at all.
Okay.
It's actually, sir, there are antibody drugs, there are anti-drug antibodies, it's true, but more humanized molecule like secukinumab, adalimumab, we do not have drug neutralizing antibodies as such. That's why if in such questions, I would rather say drugs like infliximab, if you give like you give drug holidays and start and restart, then we are higher likelihood will land to anti-drug antibodies. But for more humanized molecular antibodies like secukinumab, there's not much evidence that the antibodies actually reducing the impact of the drug. So in a sense, we are safer with that drugs.
So I'll ask one simple question is that some of the insurance companies says that because anywhere where you use the monoclonal antibodies, and it becomes an immunological disorder, so therefore we will not reimburse. Are you finding this problem in dermatology that patients are not getting reimbursement for their TNF blocker group of drugs?
We do get treatment failures. We do get treatment failures.
Insurance company not paying for infliximab?
They don't pay. The insurance companies, the regulatory authorities do not pay. The insurance companies do not pay when you use biologics for psoriasis.
Okay. I'm telling you for the viewers, for my viewers, I'm telling you that we fought one of the case in one of my family, and where we got the insurance company and we got an order from the court that they will have to pay for the biologics. So this is just to, I expected this, sir, I expected, yes.
Sir, I have found that the corporate insurance, the people who have corporate insurance, they usually get it paid very easily. It's an individual insurance that has to fight a lot, and we doctors has also a responsibility. Like all biologics, there's a criteria when we can start biologics. The many times our prescription doesn't contain body surface area involvement, quality of life impairment, or our PASI scores. Those are the things has to be written. Why you are starting biologics? That is clearly mentioned. I'm not saying that every single case they are getting, they have a lot of struggles, but there's chances of getting it increases much higher.
So the only thing I wanted to say was biologics are covered under treatment. We have some court cases, so people should be aware about that. So I come back to Dr. Thomas again, and we come back to COVID era, and we want to talk about immunosuppression. So psoriasis in COVID era, does it increase, it remains the same, or it reduces?
Yes, sir. Now I can take it up point-wise. If a psoriatic patient is not taking an immunosuppressive treatment and is free from any other underlying disease, there may be very minimal additional risk of this person developing any infection due to cold. The next thing is, individuals over the age of 60 or patients with other comorbid conditions like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, etc., can have a high risk of developing a more serious course of the illness when they get infected with COVID-19. Patients with very severe psoriasis on immunosuppressive therapies and those with other medical conditions are probably at much higher risk of infection and have increased risk of severe COVID-19. The next point will be for psoriasis diagnosed with COVID-19. Immunosuppressive treatment is not indicated, and if they are already on that, you have to stop it. This is the American Academy of Dermatology guidelines and also the European Dermatology Forum, where they say it has to be stopped. It is not recommended that psoriasis patients stop the treatment unless and until they have active infection. That is very important. Just because they show positivity to a rapid test does not indicate stoppage of. And psoriasis patients as such High-risk groups should consult the healthcare provider before they try to do anything else. And several factors, as I told you, the specific biologic, the age, the disease characteristic, the chances of exposure to COVID-19, and patient's specific situation and concern. These are all points which have to be taken into consideration.
Do you think that a patient with COVID who has skin manifestations because of COVID can cause confusion in the mind of the people? Because 25% of COVID patients, they present with gouty-like, they present with COVID toes, they present with different types of manifestations on the skin. So maybe some doctors may get confused. Is it a COVID rash or is it an exacerbation of the psoriasis?
Actually, I think we spoke about this earlier in another webinar. There's nothing specific as yet known. They say there can be an erythematous patch. There can be erythematous lesions. There could be urticarial wheals. There could be these COVID toes, which are just petechiae. Intravascular thrombosis, which occurs elsewhere, could be occurring also on the skin. So these are some of the changes that but still I wouldn't say that I am fully aware of these being specific for COVID-19 infection. I do not know.
Abhishek, you want to add something?
Sir, it's very unlikely that there are certain reports of psoriasiform lesions since COVID. There are some photographs I have seen because of the compilation, but very unlikely by a skin doctor because psoriasis is a chronic disease. It's very unlikely that people will be confusing with that. But one interesting finding about psoriasis and COVID infection, which has been found in a study, that's a good quality study I could find. The study shows that in psoriasis patients, on immunosuppression or those people, these guys are having more infection rate of COVID infection, and their hospitalization is also increasing. So people under immunosuppressives who are in psoriasis patient, they have a higher rate of infection and higher rate of hospital admission. However, their pulmonary complication, ICU admission, and death rate is not higher. So that can be explained by some of the pathogenesis which now we understand about COVID. And now COVID is supposed to cause an immune storm, and two of the thing which has cytokines which goes increase in COVID infection that can be found is interleukin-17 pathways and TNF-alpha pathway both. So there are certain suggestions that interleukin-17 blocker and TNF-alpha blocker may have even some role in protecting the lungs from the immune storms caused by COVID. And some early studies suggest that if you give interleukin-17 or TNF-alpha blocker, actually the number of the viruses increases. Obvious, because there's immunosuppression. But the lung damage is less because the immune storm is less. So these are very nice findings which is coming out. So that can be interesting over a period of time as the data generates.
So it is like Dr. Thomas, it is something like we have the results from other drugs, that is ACE inhibitors. ACE inhibitors also increases the viral load, but they reduces the cytokine storm. Therefore, they say that if you are on ACE inhibitors, continue, don't discontinue them. But if you want to start a new one, then don't start. And that's what we follow in cardiology. And because it increases the viral load, but it prevents the seriousness. So it is like you need to choose between the two. So,
exactly, sir.
Dr. Abhishek is saying is the same thing. Yes, go ahead.
So that's how the suggestions has come up. That's a suggestion has come up with a recent chart, which shows that, sir, that there are they are divided into two types of immunomodulator. One, the small molecule immunomodulator like methotrexate, cyclosporine, all those things, and is the biologics. Now, in small molecule, we have an advantage that it has a short duration of action. So we can stop it any point of time. So it actually doesn't give the stay in the body for longer period of time. So they say, okay, if there is symptoms are developing, you stop the drug. For interleukin-17 blocker and TNF-alpha, it's little tricky. They are suggesting they do not start the new drugs if you are not actually certain it's required. So be very careful of starting the biologics in a recent patients. However, patient is on the biologics, then don't stop even if there is a minor symptoms develops. Only if it's a severe symptoms develops, then you stop the drug. Because in a sense, we have to understand that even if you stop the biologics, then the drug can stay in the body for longer period of time. So you do not get implication immediately after stopping the drugs. So the situation is little more complicated in case of biologics.
You want to add something, Dr. Thomas?
Nothing, sir. I would really agree. These small molecules, are very, very safe. Apremilast, tofacitinib, these are some of those things. And as I told earlier, acitretin, all safe to be used even while an infection is there. And it can be used for a short period and stopped.
So I come back to the second part of it is that if you have a patient with psoriasis, he is on immunosuppression, and if he gets a disease, what will be the role of a dermatologist? Will he hand it over to the respiratory physician or an intensivist, or be a part of it?
We like to be a part of the team, but then with very little that we could really contribute there. Let's know our limitations and allow the specialist to look after maybe the intensivist and pass it on to a respiratory specialist. And when they do need our help, we shall be there to help them.
What about the role of steroids?
Role of steroids, yes. Now, particularly the recent studies which are showing about intravascular coagulation. Now that associated with COVID-19 infection, steroids might be helpful to bring down the inflammatory component. And I've always felt that steroids are the most economic biologic that you could think of. Just like how you think of insulin. Insulin is a biologic. Corticosteroids are biologics. When you use other biologics, you may as well use corticosteroids even in psoriasis. And in psoriasis, for instance, erythrodermic form of psoriasis, in pustular forms of psoriasis, and even in arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, we tend to use small dose of steroids. The rheumatologist uses, the general physician uses, the intensivist uses. The steroids can play a role.
Sometimes psoriatic arthritis comes much before the skin lesions. You start thinking of a seronegative spondyloarthritis. You have a patient which is Pauchy articular, that means 2 to 5 joints, and which is non-erosive and which is non-deforming. And arthritis in a patient which may have spine, which may or may not have a spine involvement. And you say this looks like a psoriatic arthritis, start looking for a patch, it is not there, and the patch comes after a few months or maybe a year. And anything you want to say about to the people who are watching, that how common it is to have an arthritis before actually getting a skin lesion?
It's about 10% of the psoriasis patient may actually precede it with an arthritis. Many a times we miss it. Many a time there may be very small lesion here and there, which possibly nobody thinks that important. The patient also doesn't show. So that's why the people who are treating psoriatic arthritis, 2 things is required. One, we need to see the skin also. People who are thinking about seronegative arthritis, they can examine the skin. Honestly, I get a lot of rheumatologists referring to me with suspected case of psoriatic arthritis to just rule out if there is in skin involvement or that, or people may have some eczemas or something like that, which they require to rule out if it is a psoriasis or not. So we need to be vigilant about those cases. We need to see whether those things, and also we can follow up. There are certain questionnaire which has developed in recent past that is available. Those questionnaires helps it's ruling out psoriatic arthritis. Even there's a minimum involvement of skin that can be also used. But I find in dermatologists, at least the knowledge or the awareness of using this questionnaire is a little less in India. But we need to develop it. Those can help. In general, we need to be aware. Psoriasis can present without psoriatic arthritis can present without the lesions of psoriasis.
Dr. Thomas, when we had an epidemic of chikungunya in the country, and we used to see a lot of people chikungunya with arthritis. Normally, we say that in 2 weeks' time, the arthritis will disappear. But in some patients, arthritis continues for a year. And then we started learning that chikungunya can precipitate underlying arthritis in rheumatoid. So some people may actually get precipitated. And in some cases in psoriasis, chikungunya can precipitate. A, how common it is. B, can COVID also behave like that? That a COVID infection, because you can have arthritis in COVID, it actually precipitates psoriasis in some people. Dr. Thomas.
Yes. Now, both A and B are correct. But the point that I would like to highlight here is when we see arthritis preceding the skin lesions psoriasis, that's where we use certain questionnaires, what Dr. Abhishek was telling us. Apart from the questionnaire, there's one thing called Casper's criteria. With Casper's criteria, we'll be able to really fit them in. Even the rheumatologist uses the Casper's criteria to fit in or to differentiate rheumatoid arthritis from psoriatic arthritis. Now, to bring an analogy from, as what you said, sir, about the chikungunya and about the possibility of COVID-19 also leading on to bringing up or bringing to surface an underlying arthritis, quite possible. And with our experience has only been for the last 3 or 4 months. So I don't think we could make any direct statement on it, but the possibility should be always kept in mind.
Okay, coming back to the mortality of COVID. COVID has a mortality if there is a cytokine storm by itself. And we said that metabolic syndrome, people who have metabolic syndrome have high mortality. And if they have associated psoriasis with metabolic syndrome, will the mortality further increase? And if they are on immunosuppression, will it further increase?
Definitely it increases, sir. The incidence, the mortality rate definitely increases with the number of comorbid conditions that the patient has. What I generally teach it as surrogate conditions. Obesity, the cardiovascular disease, again, chronic kidney disease, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, all the COPD, all this increases the mortality rate. The point is that these disorders can be caught very early. They are not invisible disorders. They can be caught early and if they're treated. As we go back to what Dr. Abhishek said, lifestyle changes. Actually, when I do lectures on psoriasis, I always make the last statement as lifestyle change holds the key in modifying the course of psoriasis. That's definitely very, very important. Lifestyle modification.
So Dr. Thomas, if psoriasis is not treated, what will be the end? What can happen?
Going for its complications. Can develop arthritis, pustular lesions can come, patient can develop erythrodermic psoriasis. That is really a medical emergency. We depend on the intensivist when there's erythroderma. We put those patients in the ICU when there's erythroderma because temperature regulation, fluid and electrolyte balance, all these have to be maintained. And we dermatologists are really not very good at this. So we depend on the intensivist. The moment we get an erythrodermic psoriasis in the ward, we immediately alert the intensivist and request them, keep a bed for us in your ward. We'll be shortly shifting our patients there. So there the mortality increases, not the morbidity. The morbidity. So the saying is psoriasis can affect an individual from head to toes, but the mortality and morbidity is not affected unless and until he exfoliates or it turns into erythrodermic psoriasis, unless and until it turns into pustular psoriasis, unless and until they develop arthritis.
So I'll come back to last 10 minutes I'll spend on lifestyle, and these 10 minutes now I'm going to go into any advances in diagnosis of psoriasis, both Dr. Thomas and Abhishek. I want to know about anything new in the field of diagnosis. Is it all clinical, biopsy, other things?
Sir, in general, psoriasis doesn't require much more than clinical, most of the patients, and sometimes we require histopathology. So diagnostically, we are not that much challenged. The more advancements has come in the field of rather comorbidity diagnosis rather than psoriasis diagnosis per se. So now there are certain things which has improved over the last 5-10 years that fast dermatologists started understanding that we need psoriasis patients who are very less symptomatic about psoriatic arthritis, we need to catch those people early. So diagnosis of arthritis has to improve. Early arthritis has to improve. A lot of patient doesn't complain themselves. So we need to give them the catch questions to find out there's an early sign of arthritis, diagnose ourselves, use the Casper criteria, or send the patient to a rheumatologist. These things have been improving, I have seen over last 8-10 years, because we are more associated. But what has have a paradigm shift, as I've already mentioned, and Sir has been telling repeatedly, that association of psoriasis is a part of metabolic syndrome. Now, even 5, 7, 10 years back, 8 years back, when we used to see psoriasis patient with limited area, we never, we are not be planning for doing any cyclosporin or any other drug like that. We never used to do a lot of tests for that. But now we do test. We do test to see the liver condition. We do test to find out is there an insulin resistance. We do test to find out if there an ischemic heart disease possibility or a lipid abnormalities. All those things has been and also diabetes, because diabetes has been increasingly associated with psoriasis. So all those things we are finding it out, and they have been seeing that some of the anti-diabetic has started giving results in psoriasis patients. So our understanding has been improved regarding the psoriasis association with these comorbidities. So possibly we are testing more to rule out the comorbidities now than actually needing much more tests to diagnose the case of psoriasis.
So do we say that any patient you get with a skin lesion, and if you suspect there is a psoriasis, which usually is a clinical diagnosis, because even we non-dermatologists can suspect and can immediately say this is psoriasis, that we start looking and investigating for all types of metabolic comorbidities. Because, and we can make a statement that it's like a kidney patient. The kidney patient don't die of a kidney disease, they die of a comorbid heart condition. So therefore, we say a psoriasis patient will have an underlying comorbid conditions. If we manage them, then only we'll be able to reduce the mortality.
Very true, sir. Very true, sir. Both mortality and morbidity.
Both mortality and morbidity. I'll come back to Dr. Thomas when you were talking about the lifestyle, because when we say about generalized symptoms, so there is a lecture by different doctors, and somebody says, do this to detect a heart attack. This is for osteoporosis. This is for this. This is for that. And then we came back with the general formula, and the general formula was anything unusual, anything for the first time, anything which is persistent for more than 2 weeks, anything which cannot be explained, go to your doctor. So you don't generalize, don't go with a specific, this is for heart attack, this is for paralysis, this is, because he gets confused with that. So similarly, if I have to define a universal lifestyle, so the lifestyle cannot be different for osteoporosis, for heart attack, for cancer, and for fall prevention. Lifestyle has to be one, and it should be a lifestyle which prevents everything. So normally in a lifestyle, we talk about regular exercise, we talk about, so anything specific when it comes to lifestyle of psoriasis? Is it specifically about diet? Is there anything different than other types of a lifestyle?
The very specific thing in psoriasis is that patients should avoid consumption of liquor.
Okay.
Very, very important, sir. Because from the treatment point of view, as well as from the prognosis point of view. Now, these patients with psoriasis are known to be having what is known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, as well as non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. It's been known, it's been proved beyond doubt that these patients have it. They need not be habitually consuming alcohol. Even without that, they'll be developing this. So they should be strictly warned against that. And number two, of course, the warning is low caloric diet. As far as possible, low caloric diet and intake of fat should be reduced, because these patients with psoriasis, particularly erythrodermic psoriasis, are known to be associated with steatorrhea. And being associated with steatorrhea can be really harming the patient to a big extent. So diet low in fat. And then exercise, depending on the mode of treatment. Because if the patient is on a retinoid, like acitretin, he can't be doing very strenuous exercise, because the joints will all get already weakened by the acitretin. So he cannot be doing very severe or very strong exercises. moderate exercises to maintain the body weight. That would be the point of advice that could be given.
But I still feel because fatty liver, 37% of the society has fatty liver. It is a part of metabolic syndrome. So anything which prevents metabolic syndrome then will prevent psoriasis. Because there also we say that if you already have a liver involvement, then the safest limit for alcohol is less than 18 ml, which nobody limits to. So therefore we say stop alcohol with that, because the NAFLD, the dose for liver, which does not cause any damage, is 18 ml of, which is almost like 6 grams of alcohol and not more than that. So coming back to, there are questions coming in. I'll start taking the questions. And he says, can you use Medrol in psoriasis, sir? Medrol is steroids we already have talked about, but you can, yes, Abhishek. What is the role of steroids in psoriasis? Let's see. He's asking.
So the role of systemic steroid, of course, we use topical steroid in psoriasis, but systemic steroid in psoriasis is debatable and in general, for present day understanding, is avoidable as much as possible. But there, as I mentioned, there are certain conditions, very rarely we may require oral steroid, but other than that, we usually do not use oral steroid. The problem is not that steroid doesn't work. Problem that steroid is works. But once you take it out, then there can be severe outburst of psoriasis, which can be pustular generalized psoriasis. That is the major fear factor behind it. So in general, dermatologists tend to avoid any kind of steroid, including Medrol.
So then he says, Dr. Thomas, is for you. He's asking specifically, methotrexate in psoriasis during COVID era. Should we hold? Should we continue? Should we start?
We can continue you can continue if there is no sign of infection in the patient. But
no, he's talking about COVID era. He's not talking about COVID patient.
Okay. During the COVID era, it's safe. You can give it because it's quite an economical drug. Taken correctly, but has to be monitored. The patient has to be monitored.
And then he says, if he develops COVID, should he stop it?
Yes, we should stop it.
In any way, 1 week only, because COVID will be all right in 2 weeks. So at the most, you are only stopping 2 doses.
Yes, just 2 doses, then we can.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, then he says, Apremilast, is it safe during COVID? And how many months can be given?
Apremilast is very safe. Acitretin and Apremilast are 2 drugs which are very safe. They may not act as rapidly as what we expect other drugs to act, but then with a person with infection, Apremilast is very safe. And even during the COVID era, it's very safe.
If only few patches of Palmer psoriasis are present, but the patient is very anxious, what should we start? Oral, injectable, biologics, and which one?
Only Palmer lesions. Only Palmer lesions. Topical steroids are good enough. And wait. You don't have to go for anything further than that.
So then the next thing he says is, this is a very general question, is methotrexate, what dose and how long?
7.5 to 15 milligrams, you can push it up to once weekly. And it's given only for 1 day in the week. And on another day, you give folic acid. Before we used to give it for all the days. I mean, the folic acid we used to give for all the days. Now we know the day following methotrexate, we could give folic acid only on that day.
In rheumatoid arthritis, we have been giving up to 20 milligram and we used to give intramuscular, and then after some time, we make it oral, and that is 7.5 milligram tablet, 2 together. But initially we give 20 milligram of injectable methotrexate. And the second thing he is asking is that folic acid, we can give it twice a week on non-methotrexate days. That's second. Third is, he says there is that my rheumatology friends always tells me to give 20 milligram of steroid before methotrexate to avoid its side effects. Is methotrexate causing some side effect which can be prevented by giving a 20 milligram of cortisol only for that particular day?
Now, the first part of it, where folic acid is being supplemented, once a week is good enough on non-methotrexate day. Once a week is good enough. That's what the recent guidelines are all about. The next part of it is the use of 20 milligrams of prednisolone prior to starting methotrexate. I'm not in the know of any definite documentation for this. But there is no harm. There is no harm in giving. There is no harm in giving. 20 milligrams is not a big dose.
On a weekly basis. And
Yes.
what about 20 milligram of methotrexate versus 15 milligram of methotrexate?
We can give, the higher the dose, we expect that the response is going to be quicker. That's not true. It's not true.
So, Dr. Abhishek, the next question which comes is that Dr. Thomas has described 6 different types of psoriasis. Can you enumerate and summarize a protocol for each condition so that our listeners can know about that?
Sir, sorry, I couldn't hear it. Some problem with the network. Can you just repeat the question, please?
The phenotypes.
Dr. Thomas has described 6 different types of
I'll
psoriasis.
repeat.
Can you enumerate one by one and their treatment protocols?
Late onset disease, which is mild and progressive.
So you say the disease and then you say the protocol. This is how you should treat.
Yes. Abhishek, you are telling or shall I tell?
You go ahead, Dr. Thomas. Yes. Dr. Thomas, you go ahead.
Sir, okay, sir, you go ahead.
Okay. Now for the late onset disease and the course, mild and progressive, where there are no comorbidities, I will try just methotrexate and be happy with that. And there was a question about injectables. Now, the last time that I tried an injectable is when I was a resident. After that, I have not found injectable methotrexate to be any much better than that. The type 2 is palmoplantar lesions without involvement of joints. You can just apply externally potent steroids and then change down to mid-potent. The third type is early onset disease or mild disease. Again, should be happy with methotrexate alone. Number 4, fourth type is severe disease with extensive skin lesions and minimal joint involvement. That is where we have to make a decision of the use of biologics. Number 5, early onset disease, severe with family history, often associated with atopy and involvement of palms and soles are rare. Here again, we can just use a good amount of methotrexate or go to the next drug, cyclosporin. And finally, the 6th type is that which is associated with the metabolic syndrome, where we have to give equal importance to the metabolic disease that is associated.
So I come back to Dr. Abhishek. Can you summarize now what Dr. Thomas has talked about 6 stages? Now, suppose he says in any condition we are going to give a biologic. If we think of starting a biologic, what should be the protocol? Because now we are going to summarize this to the people, we don't want to give them lots of options. We says this is what you can start straight away, and this is the time when you switch from one biologic to another, and this is the time to stop.
Sir, for biologics use, you just have to. Can you listen to me? Can you hear me, sir? So for biologics use, we have to remember 2 things. First, what kind of disease we can give biologics. Now, the first of the types is the disease has to be very severe. That means the disease has to be more than 10 PASI, more than 10% body surface area involvement are there. The disease has to impair your lifestyle. Sometimes it happens, suppose one patient may have certain areas of the involvement which is very exposed, and for that woman, the disease may not be that severe in generalized, but still the patient has a very good bad quality of life happening. So if the quality of life is more than 10 hampering, then also we can start biologics. Third thing, if the patient requires very quick suppression, suppose somebody's marriage is coming, so those are the time also you can think about giving biologics. So these are the indication where we can give biologics, and in this patient we have to, that's how the guidelines is to stand, we have to give at least one systemic immunomodulator, something like methotrexate or cyclosporin, and if it fails or not adequately doing enough, or it's contraindicated, or there are some side effects developing to drugs, then we can think about doing biologics. So disease has to be severe, disease has to impair quality of life very badly, the disease may have to require very fast improvement because of the patient may have some social engagement severe, like in something like marriage or something like that coming in, a very short period of time. So those are the occasion you can give biologics. And in patients where there are arthritis, then arthritis can be another indications. And the patient has to be given fast another immunomodulator. And if the immunomodulator fails or develop contraindication or side effect, then only you can give biologics.
So I'm going to ask the last question to Dr. Thomas, and that's if a patient says, I can afford, money is not a criteria, and I don't want to take any risk, should I start biologics right away? Why I'm asking this question is there's always been a debate in every subject. Some people say early renal transplant, somebody says no dialysis and then renal transplant. Rheumatoid arthritis now they say is early biologics are always better. If Crohn's disease, they say that early biologics are always better. So do you find any case for early biologics in psoriatic arthritis that
No,
if a patient
certainly not, sir. Actually, to be very honest to you and to all the viewers, I must say that I'm not a big fan of biologics. I'm not a big fan of biologics. But then when it really is, disease is extensive. And as what Dr. Abhishek said, if there is an emergent situation where it is imminent, not cure, imminent remission of the disease is required, then maybe you could start a biologic. But I like to further, as a line extension, would please like to add that if you really want a crisis buster, cyclosporin is the best. If the renal parameters are found to be normal, as a crisis buster, cyclosporin is the best to be found. 400 milligrams to start with daily and quickly taper it down to 100 or 50 to 100 milligrams, and you find the skin lesions disappear like butter.
So dear friends, psoriatic is no more a stigma. It can be treated. It's a chronic manageable disease. When people can live today with HIV, psoriasis is nothing in front of that. It's a chronic manageable disease. Never tell your patients to, not to tell about the doctor. People try to, they try to show to the doctors, I'm not having any skin condition. So this is something not to be kept it as a secret. Always tell your doctor, show your doctor, I have some skin lesion, kindly find out what the treatment is available. One, psoriasis, as a dermatologist, you always look for metabolic syndrome. So I tell my doctors from today that whenever you have a patient with metabolic syndrome, also ask about psoriasis. He may be having a hidden psoriasis. That is a new learning for me. I was not aware about that. There is an association of psoriasis with metabolic syndrome so strong that we have to give an indication that every patient with metabolic syndrome, we should look for a psoriasis. And I'll go to the extent, anybody with a pot belly obesity, anybody who is a couch potato, and we should ask him, I hope you are not having a skin lesion. A general way, a skin lesion, because metabolic syndrome is 37% in the society. It's hyperinsulinism, it is insulin resistance, insulin levels are higher, it's a proteome manifestation, and now we have learned it can also have a psoriasis. A, psoriasis is no more a stigma. B, once you have a psoriasis, talk to your dermatology colleague. He will be able to tell you out of the 6 which condition it is, and he will be able to triage for you whether you need only a topical treatment, whether you need a small molecule treatment, or whether you need a biologics. Yes, there can be a psoriatic emergency where cyclosporin will be the drug of choice, but there are tips given by Dr. Abhishek that don't postpone your marriage if you have a psoriasis, and you can you can have a temporary suppression of psoriasis by using biologics. And the answer by Dr. Thomas is that biologics is not something which you should start early enough. If there is a specific indication for biologics, then they have to be given, and there is no choice for that. If you are on immunosuppression, continue in the COVID era, but don't start a new immunosuppression in the COVID era. Specifically, if you develop a COVID symptoms, you can definitely postpone starting any treatment for a couple of weeks if you are having any COVID symptoms for that. That's all for today. Let's thanks Dr. Jayakar Thomas and Dr. Abhishek Dey to be here with us. All my colleagues, we have got large number of your questions. We will answer them and send you back. And the link of this will be available to all of you. We will send it by email to everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and thank you, Dr. Abhishek.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.